Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the console as the alert klaxon screamed, her fingers flying across the flickering holographic display. All hands brace! Incoming barrage from the Zorath fleet. Shields at 40%. Her voice cut through the chaos on the bridge of the UNS Vanguard. Steady despite the deck shuddering under plasma impacts, Lieutenant Raj Patel, her tactical officer, leaned forward, sweat beading on his brow. Ma'am, they're locking quantum torpedoes. ETA 30 seconds. We can't outrun them in this nebula. His hands danced over the weapons panel, rerouting power from life support to the forward batteries. The air hummed with the strain of overtaxed engines, a metallic tang biting at their throats. Elena shot him a glance, her dark eyes sharp. We don't run, Raj, not today. Divert auxiliary thrusters, flank speed toward that debris field. If we can use the wreckage for cover. She trailed off as another hit rocked the ship, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. The Zorath had been hunting humanity for centuries, their ancient grudge etched in the stars. But this ambush felt too precise, too coordinated. Ensign Lila Chen, the young navigator, swiveled in her chair, her face pale but resolute. Debris field in range, Captain. But it's unstable, old colony ruins. One wrong maneuver and we're scrap. She punched in the coordinates, her voice barely above the din. The crew had been together for 2 years, forged in the fires of border skirmishes, and now, with the Zorath's full armada closing in, trust was their only edge. Make the wrong one later, Elena snapped, buckling down as the Vanguard lurched into the field. Chunks of twisted metal loomed in the view screen, remnants of a human outpost the Zorath had glassed eons ago. Or so their propaganda claimed. Elena's mind raced. Intel had whispered of a Zorath plot spanning millennia, a slow genocide disguised as cosmic balance. But whispers didn't save ships. The first torpedo grazed the shields, a violet bloom against the void. Raj whooped as he fired a counter-salvo. Got one. But they're adapting, shields modulating to our frequency. Tension coiled in his words, the witty edge from mess hall banter gone, replaced by raw focus. Elena nodded, her mind piecing together fragments from intercepted transmissions. The Zorath elders, those tentacled schemers, had woven their endgame through human history. Subtle sabotages, engineered plagues. Yet here they were, overconfident in their superiority, underestimating the grit that built empires from dust. Chen, thread the needle, aim for that central spire. Raj, prep the EMP mines from engineering. If we can blind their sensors. Her plan was half-formed, born of desperation, but it was something. The ship groaned as it weaved through the debris, a hulking shadow among ghosts. A direct hit slammed into the hull, lights flickering to red emergency. Alarms wailed anew. Hull breach in Sector 7. Casualties? Elena barked, unstrapping to steady herself. 3 down, ma'am, Raj replied, voice tight. But we're holding. Not for long. The Zorath cruiser, a behemoth of iridescent chitin plating, emerged from the nebula's edge, its weapons glowing with malice. Elena's jaw set. They thought humanity's end was inevitable, plotted in shadowed councils for ages. She clenched her fist. Not on her watch. Elena gripped the command console, her knuckles whitening as the Zorath cruiser's targeting arrays locked on. Helm evasive pattern Delta 7. Raj, get those EMPs online now. The bridge shuddered under another volley, sparks erupting from a nearby panel, sparks that danced like fireflies in the dim red glow. Lila, the young navigator with her quick fingers and sharper tongue, twisted in her seat. They're predicting our moves, Captain. That thing's got AI smarter than our whole fleet combined. Smarter doesn't mean unbeatable? Elena shot back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The nebula's swirling gases hid them for now. But the Zorath ship sliced through like a predator through mist. They'd ambushed humanity's outposts for decades. Their ancient grudge whispered in intercepted signals. Humans were the upstarts, the plague on the stars. Eons of plotting, and now this cruiser was the hammer. Raj's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering, laced with the hum of straining machinery. EMP's charged, but the breach in 7 is venting plasma. I need 5 minutes to seal it or we'll lose containment. 3, Elena countered. Lila, plot a slingshot around that asteroid cluster. Use the gravity well to mask our signature. Aye, ma'am. Lila's hands flew across her controls, the ship banking hard. Inertia pressed them into their harnesses, the stars outside blurring into streaks. Elena felt the familiar burn in her chest, Not fear, but the raw edge of defiance. Her crew, Raj, the steady engineer who'd patched this old bucket together from scrap. Lila, the prodigy poached from a mining colony. All fire and no quit. And herself, Captain Elena Vasquez, who'd clawed her way up from enlisted grunt to this. 3 against a Leviathan. Odds that would break lesser souls. The asteroid field loomed, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits. Lila whooped as they skimmed the edge of one, the cruiser's fire grazing their shields. Too close. That was for the Orion outpost they glassed last month. Focus, Elena said, though her mind flashed to the reports. Entire colonies vaporized. Billions schemed against in Zorath archives dating back millennia. They saw humans as vermin to exterminate. But vermin fought dirty. A new alarm blared, proximity alert. The Zorath ship had flanked them, emerging from the debris like a nightmare uncoiling. Its chitinous hull gleamed under the nebula's aurora, ports irising open to reveal energy lances humming to life. Raj! Elena yelled into the comm. Working it. Breach sealed, EMPs deploying in 10. The first lance struck, shearing off a sensor array. The bridge lights dipped, consoles flickering. Lila cursed, rerouting power manually. Shields at 40%. We can't take another hit like that. Elena unstrapped, grabbing a manual override panel. Her hands moved on instinct, years of drills kicking in. Divert auxiliary to forward baffles. Buy us time. The ship lurched as the EMP mines ejected in a shimmering trail, tiny orbs scattering like seeds. The Zorath cruiser fired again, but the asteroids deflected the beam, exploding one rock into a spray of molten fragments. Debris pinged off their hull, a deadly hail. 9, 8, Raj's count echoed. The cruiser's sensors swept the field, locking onto the mines. Elena held her breath. If they detected the trap, a secondary explosion rocked them. Not from the enemy, but internal. Sector 7's patch had failed. Containment breach, Raj shouted. Evacuating. Wait, no, I've got it. Smoke billowed into the vents, acrid and choking. Lila coughed, slamming a fist on her console. Captain, they're arming torpedoes. Big ones. Elena slammed the override, stabilizing the baffles just as the torpedoes launched. Twin streaks of plasma homing and relentless. Detonate the mines early. Raj didn't hesitate. Firing! The EMPs burst in a cascade of electromagnetic fury, invisible waves rippling out. The torpedoes veered wild, detonating harmlessly against an asteroid. The cruiser spasmed, its systems frying. Lights dimming along its length, weapons powering down. For a heartbeat, silence reigned on the bridge, then cheers erupted raw and triumphant. Leela punched the air. We blinded the bastard! Elena allowed herself a grim smile, strapping back in. But the smoke lingered and Raj's voice came faint. Captain, we lost 2 in engineering. Holding, but barely. The cost tallied already. She nodded to the display where the cruiser drifted. Vulnerable but not dead. Lila set course for the spire. We've got a window, let's use it. The ship accelerated, weaving toward the nebula's heart, where the Zorath command nexus waited like a poisoned crown. They weren't done plotting humanity's end. But Tuesday was coming fast. The nebula's tendrils clawed at the viewport. Violet gases swirling like angry spirits as the ship plunged deeper. Elena gripped the armrests, her knuckles white against the worn leather. Alarms blared intermittently, a staccato reminder of the engine's protesting whine. Lila, how's our evasion holding? Elena's voice cut through the din, steady but edged with urgency. The pilot's fingers danced over the console, sweat beading on her forehead. Tight, Captain. But these currents are pulling us off vector. One wrong drift and we're ghost bait. Raj hunched over his station, rerouting power with frantic taps. Shields at 40%. That asteroid hit cooked the relays. I can patch it, but it'll take time we don't have. Elena nodded, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Zorath cruiser lagged behind, its silhouette a jagged scar against the stars. But sensor ghosts flickered, reinforcements stirring in the nebula's folds. They had bought a window, not a victory. The spire loomed ahead, a crystalline monolith piercing the gas clouds, pulsing with alien energy. The Zorath's command nexus, heart of their eons-long siege on human colonies, plotting extinction like it was a scheduled meeting. Time to intercept? She asked. 12 minutes, Lila replied. If we don't shake the pursuit. A shudder rippled through the hull and red lights flashed, another power surge. Raj cursed under his breath. Incoming scan. They're probing for weak points. Elena's mind raced. Blind them again? No, the EMP torpedo was spent. Reroute to weapons? That left life support vulnerable. She leaned forward. Raj, can we spoof the signature? Make us look like debris? He paused, brow furrowing, then grinned faintly. The first spark of that human grit she'd relied on since the academy. Debris? Hell, Captain, we can do better. Dump the auxiliary fuel cells, modulate the exhaust. It'll mimic a failing Zorath scout pod. They hate their own junk clogging the lanes. Do it, Elena ordered. Lila, plot a slingshot around that gas pocket. Use the drag to slow us, sell the illusion. The ship groaned as Raj executed, venting plasma in controlled bursts. The console lit up with false readings, broadcasting a signature of a crippled enemy vessel adrift. Lila banked hard, the stars wheeling outside as they skimmed the nebula's edge. Tension coiled in Elena's chest. One glitch and the cruiser would vaporize them. Seconds stretched. The pursuit icon on the display hesitated, then veered slightly, scanners sweeping past. It's working, Raj whispered. They're buying it. But the spire grew larger, its facets gleaming with an unnatural iridescence, broadcasting signals that itched at the edges of Elena's thoughts, like whispers in a language of static. She shook it off. Maintain course. We breach the outer shell, plant the disruptor, shut down their fleet coordination, and the colonies get breathing room. Lila's laugh was sharp, defiant. By Tuesday, right? Humanity's favorite deadline. Elena allowed a tight smile. Damn straight, another jolt hit, fiercer this time. Consoles sparked and Raj slammed a panel shut. Fuel dumps destabilizing the core. We've got overheating 5 minutes before cascade. The stakes twisted tighter. The cruiser was regrouping, its vector shifting back toward them. Elena's hand hovered over the comms. Call for backup? No signals pierced the nebula. They were alone, as always. Improvise or die. Raj, vent the excess heat into the forward bays. Use it to mask our approach, turn the spire's sensors against us. He blinked, then nodded, hands flying. Risky. Could fry the disruptor payload. Better fried than unused, she said. The ship lurched into the spire's shadow, the nebula's glow bathing the bridge in eerie light. Alarms wailed as the ploy engaged, their thermal bloom mimicking a solar flare. The Zorath cruiser fired a warning shot, lancing plasma that scorched the void mere kilometers away. Lila whooped, yanking the yoke. We're in. Docking clamps engaging. Dull thuds echoed as they latched onto the spire's hull. Elena unstrapped, grabbing her toolkit. Raj, you and Lila hold the fort. Keep that cruiser dancing. I'll plant the charge. He handed her the disruptor, a compact cylinder humming with jury-rigged human tech. 10 minutes max, Captain. Then we bail or we're part of the scenery. She clapped his shoulder, the camaraderie a brief anchor in the storm. See you on the other side. The airlock cycled with a hiss, spilling her into the spire's corridor. Alien air tasted metallic, walls veined with glowing conduits that pulsed like veins. Footsteps echoed faintly. Guards. Elena crouched, pulse rifle ready, her breath steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. The Zorath had plotted for eons, their empire a web of calculated doom. But humans? We turned Tuesdays into turning points. She moved forward, the disruptor heavy in her grip, shadows lengthening as the first patrol rounded the bend. Elena pressed her back against the corridor wall, the cool metal biting through her suit as the patrol's footsteps grew louder. 3 Zorath guards, their elongated limbs clicking against the floor, scanned the shadows with multifaceted eyes that gleamed under the pulsing lights. She held her breath, finger hovering over the pulse rifle's trigger. One wrong move and the whole infiltration would unravel before it began. The lead guard paused, its crest flaring in suspicion. Anomaly detected in sector flow. It rasped in their guttural tongue, but Elena's implant translated it seamlessly. The others fanned out, probing the air with sensor-tipped appendages. She couldn't take them all without raising the alarm. Time for a diversion. Gripping the disruptor tighter, she thumbed the activation switch and lobbed it low like skipping a stone across a frozen pond. It skittered down the corridor, humming faintly, then erupted in a cascade of erratic energy bursts, human fireworks, jury-rigged from scavenged parts to mimic a power surge. The guards whirled toward the noise, their bodies tensing. Containment breach! The lead one barked, rushing forward. Elena darted the opposite way, boots silent on the grated floor, slipping into a side vent just as the first energy pulse lit up the hall behind her. Inside the vent, the air was stale and thick, carrying the faint ozone tang of alien machinery. She crawled forward, the disruptor's timer ticking in her mind, 8 minutes left. The plan was simple. Reach the core chamber, plant the overload device, and ghost out before the Zorath's endless schemes crumbled. But simplicity was a luxury humans rarely afforded themselves. A grate ahead rattled. She froze. Below, in what looked like a maintenance bay, 2 technicians hunched over a console, their backs to her. One muttered about human vermin infiltrating the outer rims, the words dripping with the arrogance of a species that had toyed with extinction for millennia. Elena's jaw tightened. They'd glassed colonies, poisoned atmospheres, all in the name of some cosmic balance they claimed superiority in upholding. Tuesday's payback felt almost poetic. She dropped silently, landing in a crouch behind a stack of conduits. The technicians didn't notice, too engrossed in recalibrating a shield generator. Elena edged closer, her knife slipping from its sheath, quick and quiet, no shots to echo. But as she raised it, the first technician turned, its eyes widening in that split-second horror only prey recognizes. Elena lunged, clamping a gloved hand over its mouth equivalent while driving the blade home. It thrashed once, then slumped. The second one spun, emitting a shrill alarm chirp, but she was already on it, tackling it to the ground. Fists and elbows flew in a brutal tangle, her training kicking in, human grit against alien frailty. A lucky elbow cracked its exoskeleton and it went limp. Panting, she dragged the bodies into the shadows, wiping blood from her face. The alarm chirp had been short, but echoes traveled in these spires. 5 minutes down, she scavenged an access key from the console, overriding the bay door with a satisfying hiss. The corridor beyond opened into a wider atrium, bridges arching over a chasm that dropped into glowing depths, the heart of the Zorath's data nexus. Holographic displays flickered with star maps plotting vectors toward human worlds. Elena's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a weapon. It was their doomsday ledger. Footsteps again, heavier this time. Reinforcements. She sprinted across the nearest bridge, the keycard burning in her fist. Halfway over, a squad of 4 Zorath burst from an alcove, energy lances charging with a whine. "Intruder!" "Seal the nexus," their commander bellowed. Elena dove behind a support pillar as the first lance bolt scorched the air. She returned fire, her pulse rifle barking in controlled bursts. One guard crumpled, clutching a smoking hole in its chest. The others advanced methodical, their formation tight like they'd rehearsed galaxy-ending drills for Eons. She rolled, firing from the hip, but they were closing. A bolt grazed her shoulder, searing pain lancing through her arm. Gritting her teeth, she scanned for options. The bridge's railing hummed with energy conduits, Zorath tech but vulnerable to overload. Improvising on the fly, she yanked a panel loose and jammed her rifle's power cell into the wiring. Sparks flew and the railing erupted in a chain reaction, buckling the bridge's edge. 2 guards plummeted into the chasm with shrieks that echoed like fracturing empires. The remaining 2 hesitated and Elena seized the moment. She charged, tackling the commander over the side in a tangle of limbs. They grappled mid-air for a heartbeat before she kicked free, grabbing a dangling cable. The commander vanished into the glow below. Dangling one-handed, her shoulder screaming, Elena hauled herself up. The atrium alarms wailed now, red lights strobing. 2 minutes left on the disruptor. The core chamber door loomed ahead, sealed but mocking. She slammed the keycard into the slot. It beeped denial. Damn it, techs must have had limited access. Think, Elena. Human ingenuity wasn't about perfection. It was about bending the unbreakable. Wires from the bridge still sparked nearby. She ripped one free, stripping insulation with her teeth, and hot-wired the panel. Sparks bit her fingers, but the door ground open with a groan. Inside, the core pulsed like a mechanical heart, tendrils of data weaving through the air. Elena planted the overload charge, another human hack, volatile and beautiful, setting the timer for 30 seconds. Just enough. As she turned to run, the chamber shook. Zorath reinforcements flooded the atrium. Elena sprinted down the corridor, the overload charge's timer ticking in her mind like a bomb in her chest. Footsteps echoed behind her, too many, too coordinated. The Zorath were closing in, their elongated limbs propelling them faster than any human could match on a good day. She vaulted over a fallen console, its screens flickering with error codes from the earlier sabotage. Flank left. A guttural voice barked in their clicking tongue, translated instantly by her suit's implant. They were splitting up, predicting her path through the ship's labyrinthine vents. She dove into a side passage, the walls humming with the disruptor's failing pulse. Her breath came in ragged bursts, The air recyclers were shot, laced with that acrid alien tang that burned her throat. No time for subtlety. She yanked a plasma cutter from her belt, meant for hull repairs, not warfare, and slashed at the nearest access panel. It sparked and gave way, revealing a bundle of glowing conduits. The first Zorath rounded the corner, its multifaceted eyes locking on her like a predator's glare. It raised a vibro-lance, the weapon humming with lethal intent. Elena didn't hesitate. She overloaded the conduits with a quick shunt from the cutter, sending a surge of raw energy arcing toward the alien. The Zorath convulsed, its exoskeleton cracking under the electric assault, but it didn't drop. Not fully. Persistent bastards, she muttered, grabbing a loose strut from the wall and swinging it like a bat. The metal connected with a sickening crunch, buying her seconds as the creature staggered. More were coming, shadows lengthening in the dim light. She bolted deeper into the maintenance tunnels, the ship groaning around her like a wounded beast. The overload would detonate soon, but if these reinforcements reached the core first, her hack was for nothing. Humanity's gambit, decades of stolen tech and sheer audacity, hung on this moment. No grand fleet, just her, a skeleton crew, and whatever grit they could muster. A junction ahead split three ways: engineering, escape pods, or the auxiliary bridge. Pods were a trap. Zorath would pick them off like flies. Engineering meant facing the heart of their defenses. Bridge it was, maybe she could lock down bulkheads from there. Her comms crackled to life. Elena, status? We're holding the hangar, but they're swarming. It was Marcus, his voice steady despite the chaos, the cautious one who'd argued against this suicide run until the end. Cores set. 30 seconds out. Reinforcements on my tail. 3, maybe 4. Need a diversion. Copy, rerouting drones now. Get to the bridge. I'll buy you time. The tunnel narrowed, forcing her to crawl. Behind, the Zorath's claws scraped against the metal, relentless. She pushed forward, the faint vibration of the impending explosion rumbling through the floor. One wrong turn and it was over. Not just for her, but for the fragile alliance back on Earth. The last stand against eons of plotting shadows. She emerged into the auxiliary bridge, a cramped nook cluttered with holographic displays flickering in protest. Slamming the override, she sealed the hatch just as the first Zorath slammed against it. The door buckled but held for now. Fingers flying over the controls, Elena initiated the lockdown sequence. Alarms blared, red lights strobing as bulkheads dropped across the sector. It wouldn't stop them all, but it funneled the horde, giving Marcus's drones a shot. The ship lurched violently. The overload hit. A wave of heat and decompression rocked the deck, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. Elena braced against the console, the force pressing her into the bulkhead. The Zorath outside howled, a sound like tearing metal as the core's failure rippled through their systems. But victory not yet. Scans showed auxiliary power kicking in. The Zorath ship was wounded, not dead, and from the readings their mothership loomed in the void, launching fighters. Marcus's voice cut through again. Charges away. Drones lighting them up. But Elena, we've got incoming. Big ones. She straightened, wiping blood from a cut on her forehead. The bridge viewport showed the stars twisting in the artificial gravity's wobble. No retreat now. Humanity's end. They'd plotted it for eons. Tuesday was their deadline, all right, but it was the Zorath's, not ours. Arm the countermeasures, she ordered, her voice iron. We're not done. Elena gripped the console as the first fighter streaked past, its engines a blur against the stars. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the bridge like a frantic heartbeat. She jabbed at the countermeasures panel, launching a swarm of decoys that ignited in brilliant white flares, drawing the Zorath drones off course. Marcus's face flickered on the comm screen, sweat beading on his brow amid the sparks from his fighter's cockpit. They're vectoring in, 3 on my tail. I can shake 'em, but it'll cost fuel we don't have. Do it, she snapped, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Zorath mothership hung there, a jagged monolith of black alloy, vomiting more fighters into the fray. Its auxiliary power had stabilized, shields flickering back to life. One sabotage run and they'd bought time, nothing more. Beside her, Jax hunched over the engineering station, his fingers flying across the holographic keys. The kid was all wiry energy, cautious to a fault, but his mind worked like a trap, spotting flaws others missed. Core's holding at 30%, he muttered, voice tight. But if we push the engines, we risk a cascade failure. Those fighters are packing plasma lances. One hit and we're vapor. Elena nodded, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air. The bulkhead still groaned from the earlier breach, a reminder of how close they'd come. Prioritize the railguns. We need to thin their numbers before they swarm. The ship shuddered as a plasma bolt grazed the hull, heat blooming through the deck plates. Jax yelped, yanking his hand back from a sparking panel. Shields at 60. Rerouting power. Incoming broadside! Marcus's warning cut in, his fighter banking hard. On the viewport, 2 Zorath crafts peeled off, locking onto their position. Elena's stomach twisted. The Zorath didn't fight fair. They'd engineered this war for centuries, probing human worlds with subtle plagues and orbital strikes, plotting extinction like a patient predator. But humans? We adapted. We improvised. Helm, evasive pattern delta, she ordered, sliding into the captain's chair. The ship lurched, thrusters firing in a wild corkscrew that slung her against the restraints. Jax braced himself, rerouting auxiliary lines with grim focus. A decoy burst nearby, its explosion lighting the bridge in stark relief, the face of their looming doom etched in every shadow. Marcus's voice crackled again, strained. Got one, splashed it clean, but the big boy's launching bombers. Eat at 2 minutes. Elena's mind raced. Bombers meant boarding pods, Zorath shock troops designed to rip through hulls and flesh alike. No way to outrun them in their wounded state. She glanced at Jax, who was already pulling up schematics, his cautious nature yielding to the fire in his eyes. Options? She asked, keeping it terse. He hesitated, then pointed to a flickering readout. The salvage drones from the earlier run, they're still tethered. If we overload their EM fields, we could turn them into a makeshift net, disrupt the bomber's nav systems mid-approach. It was risky, untested, born from desperation. But the Zorath expected precision, not this scrappy human hack. Elena smiled faintly, the first crack in the tension. Make it happen. Marcus, buy us 30 seconds. Affirmative, he replied, his fighter diving into the swarm. Explosions dotted the void, brief suns winking out as he weaved through the chaos, railgun fire stitching the darkness. Jax worked feverishly, sweat dripping onto the console. Elena watched the bombers close in, their hulls gleaming like obsidian knives. The ship bucked again, another near miss shearing off a sensor array. Alarms wailed, but she tuned them out, focusing on the plan unfolding. EM fields charging, Jax announced. Drones deploying now! The salvage units, bulky and unassuming, unfurled like metallic jellyfish, their fields humming to life. The lead bomber veered, systems frying in a cascade of static. It plowed into its wingman, a chain reaction blooming into fireballs that lit the mothership's silhouette. One got through, slamming a pod against their hull with a thunderous clang. Elena's ears rang as the breach alarm screamed. Boarders! Seal bulkheads, arm the teams. Jax grabbed a pulse rifle from the locker, his hand steady despite the fear in his eyes. Elena rose, drawing her own sidearm, the weight familiar and grounding. The Zorath had plotted for eons, but today, in this battered corner of space, humanity struck back. Marines poured into the corridor, boots pounding. The pod's hatch hissed open, revealing hulking figures in powered exosuits, their howls echoing like the ship's dying gasps. Elena took position behind a barricade, firing the first shot that sparked off Zorath armor. They came in a rush, claws extended, but the humans held, Jax covering her flank with precise bursts, his caution turning to calculated bravery. A trooper went down, screeching, its blood acidic and smoking on the deck. Push them back! Elena yelled, advancing step by step. The fight was brutal, close-quarter savagery, but each fallen Zorath bought them space. Marcus's voice buzzed in her earpiece. Bombers scattered, mothership's shields dropping. We're in! Elena fired again, dropping another boarder. The corridor reeked of ozone and charred flesh. Jax grunted as a claw grazed his arm, but he didn't falter, slamming a charge into the pod's core. It detonated in a contained blast, sealing the breach and hurling the last Zorath into the void. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the acrid smoke from the blast curling around her like a shroud. The corridor hummed with the ship's emergency klaxons, a relentless wail that drilled into her skull. Jax slumped against the bulkhead, clutching his grazed arm, blood seeping through his fingers in dark rivulets. That was too close, he muttered, his voice steady despite the pain etching lines across his face. She nodded, scanning the sealed breach. The Zorath pod was gone, reduced to twisted metal venting into space, but the victory felt hollow. Marcus's update crackled over the comms. Shields are flickering, we've got a window, but it's narrowing fast. Get to the bridge, Elena. Engineering's reporting overloads across the board. Copy that. she replied, hauling Jax to his feet. His weight leaned into her, a testament to the caution that had kept him alive this long. Always one step back, assessing before leaping. But now with the ship groaning under strain, there was no room for hesitation. They moved, boots pounding against the grated floor past flickering lights and sparking panels. The ship shuddered violently as they rounded a corner, gravity fluctuating in sickening waves. Elena's stomach lurched. Another hit from the Zorath bombers, no doubt regrouping for a final assault. "They're not done," Jax said, grimacing as he reloaded his rifle one-handed. "Those bastards adapt quick. We improvise or we're scrap." She pushed open the hatch to the central conduit, a narrow tube of conduits and access ladders snaking toward the bridge. The air grew thicker here, laced with the tang of overheating circuits. Climbing, Elena's mind raced. The Zorath had plotted this for eons, their empire-spanning stars. Yet humanity's ragtag fleet had punched through their lines. Grit, that's what Marcus always said. Pure, stubborn human grit. A low rumble built beneath them, vibrating through the ladder rungs. Jax glanced down, eyes widening. "Elena, auxiliary power surge. If it blows, this whole section goes." She cursed under her breath, accelerating her climb. The conduit walls pressed in, cables snaking like veins pulsing with failing energy. Sparks showered from above, singeing her uniform. "Keep moving. Bridge is our only shot at rerouting power." Halfway up, the surge hit. The ladder buckled, metal screeching as a conduit ruptured. Jack slipped, his injured arm giving way, and he dangled for a heartbeat, caution forgotten in the raw pull of survival. Elena lunged, grabbing his wrist with both hands, muscles burning. "Not today," she growled, hauling him up inch by agonizing inch. He found Purchase scrambling beside her as the conduit stabilized, but not before a secondary spark leaped across, charring the edge of his sleeve. They collapsed onto the next platform, breaths ragged. "Thanks," Jack said. No wit in his tone this time, just raw gratitude. "Don't mention it." Elena punched the access panel, the hatch hissing open to the bridge antechamber. Alarms blared louder here, red lights strobing across consoles manned by a skeleton crew. Humans who'd held the line through hell. Marcus turned from the main viewport, his face gaunt under the glow of tactical displays. About time. "Zorath command ships closing. They've got boarding parties massing at the hangar bays. We seal those or they overwhelm us." Elena stepped forward, Jax at her side, the weight of the fight settling like lead in her chest. The viewport showed the enemy vessel, a behemoth of jagged spines and glowing ports dwarfing their cruiser, but in its shadow, human fighters darted like hornets, drawing fire, buying seconds. "Options?" she asked, sliding into attack station. Marcus tapped a schematic, fingers flying. "Standard protocols out. Their shields are modulating against our jammers. But if we vent the hangars manually, we trap the boarders. Risk is losing our own evac routes." Jax leaned in, wincing as he adjusted his arm. "Venting suicide if they breach first. What about the cargo bays? Rig them as decoys. Flood with plasma charges, draw the pods there." Elena's eyes lit. Ingenuity, the kind that turned eons of alien plotting into Tuesday's cleanup. "Do it, I'll coordinate from here. Jax, get to engineering, reinforce those vents." He nodded, the cautious glint in his eye sharpening to resolve. As he moved out, the ship rocked again, a direct hit glancing off the hull. Consoles sparked, and a crewman cried out, clutching a burned hand. "Make it count," Marcus said, his voice an anchor in the chaos. Elena keyed the comms, her orders crisp over the din. "All hands decoy protocol alpha. Cargo bays hot. Lure them in, then light them up." The bridge thrummed with activity, humans moving as one, their camaraderie a quiet fire against the encroaching dark. Outside, the Zorath ship loomed larger, but for the first time Elena saw the fracture, their ancient schemes cracking under improvised human will. Jax's voice cut through. "Charges set. They're taking the bait." She watched the tactical feed, pods detaching from the enemy like swarming insects vectoring toward the cargo bays. Tension coiled in her gut, the stakes raw. One misfire, and the heart of their fleet gutted. "Fire on my mark," she said, fingers hovering over the console. The pods closed in, oblivious. "Mark." Plasma bloomed across the bays, a brilliant flare that lit the void. Zorath vessels crumpled, debris spinning into the black. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short and fierce. But as the smoke cleared, a new alert blared. Helena gripped the armrest as the klaxon pierced the bridge, red lights strobing across consoles like arterial blood. The Zorath weren't done, far from it. The tactical display bloomed with fresh signatures. reinforcements warping in from the system's edge. A flotilla of sleek predators that dwarfed the debris field they'd just created. "Captain," Jack said, his voice steady but edged with gravel. "That's the main assault wave. 3 cruisers, escorts, and what looks like a command dreadnought. They're vectoring straight for us." She nodded, eyes locked on the holoscreen. The initial victory had bought them time, not safety. Their improvised minefield in the cargo bays had gutted the vanguard, but this was the hammer descending. Humanity's fleet was scattered, the Zorath having picked them off world by world for cycles. Now here at Epsilon Verge, the remnants clung to this battered corvette, the Defiant like barnacles on a sinking hull. "Status on the engines?" Elena asked, forcing calm into her tone. She was the cautious one, the planner who'd mapped every contingency before the war even sparked. But plans cracked under fire, and Jax, brave bull-headed Jax, always charged the breach. "Running hot," he replied, fingers dancing over his panel. "We took a glancing hit during the pod swarm. Shield's at 40%, but I can coax another jump if we nurse her." The bridge hummed with urgency. Mira, their wiry engineer tucked in the corner station, piped up without looking up from her diagnostics. "Not without rerouting auxiliary power, Cap. That means offline weapons for the duration. Your call." Elena weighed it, the void pressing in through the viewport. Lose the guns and they'd be sitting ducks for the dreadnought's lances. But staying meant annihilation. The Zorath had plotted this end for eons, their ancient grudge against human expansion turning stars to ash. They called it the Reckoning. She called it survival. Root it, she decided. Jax plot a slingshot around the gas giant. Use its gravity well to mask our signature. He grinned, that reckless spark in his eyes. "Aye. Sloppy, but it'll work. Mira, you heard her. Divert now." Wires sparked as Mira yanked panels, her cautious precision mirroring Elena's own. Diverting. "Weapons cold in 3, 2... The ship groaned, a deep vibration rattling teeth. Alarms wailed anew, proximity alerts. The Zorath escorts were closing, their sensor pings like predator calls in the dark. "They're locking on," Jax warned. "Evasive pattern Delta." Elena shook her head. "No straight line until the well takes us. Draw them in." Mira's brow furrowed. "That's suicide. They'll shred us before—" "Trust it," Elena cut in, her voice firm. She'd seen the scans. The giant's rings held ionized particles, a natural jammer if they timed it right. Human grit against alien perfection. The Defiant surged forward, engines flaring blue against the black. Enemy fire streaked past, plasma bolts grazing the hull in searing kisses. One struck true, buckling a strut. The ship lurched, sparks flying from overhead conduits. "Impact on port side," Jax shouted, wrestling controls. Holding course, but barely. Elena braced as another volley lit the void, the dreadnought silhouette growing monstrous. They were buying seconds, nothing more. Then the gas giant loomed, its swirling bands swallowing stars. "Entering interference zone," Mira announced, her voice tight. "Sensors blind. There's 2 if we're lucky." The bridge plunged into a hazy static, displays flickering. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of straining systems. Elena's heart pounded. Had they slipped the noose or just deepened the trap? A shudder rippled through the deck. Collision? No docking clamps? Impossible. "Boarders!" Jax yelled, drawing his sidearm. Zorath drop pods latched amidships. Elena's mind raced. The interference had hidden them from big guns, but not the close assault. Cautious planning met brutal reality. The Zorath adapted faster than code. "Seal bulkheads," she ordered. "Mira, arm the internal defenses. Jax, with me, we hold the bridge." He nodded, chambering around. "No ancient plot ends us today." They moved as one, the corridor ahead echoing with the hiss of cutting torches. The fight narrowed to steel and will, humanity's edge in the breach. Elena gripped the bulkhead edge, her pulse sinking with the rhythmic screech of plasma torches slicing through the hull. Jax flanked her, his sidearm steady, eyes locked on the widening breach like a hawk on prey. Behind them, Mira's fingers flew over a portable console, rerouting power to the corridor's automated turrets. Simple pop-up guns meant for pirates, not this. The metal gave way with a groan, and Zorath warriors poured in, their chitinous forms gleaming under emergency lights. Taller than humans, with segmented limbs ending in razor claws, they moved in eerie silence. No war cries, just the click of joints on deck plating. The first one lunged, mandibles snapping. Jax fired first, a burst from his railgun punching through the creature's carapace. It crumpled, acidic blood hissing on the floor, but 2 more vaulted over it, claws raking the air. Elena dodged left, her own pistol barking. Missed the head, caught a leg. The Zorath staggered but pressed on, its eyes, cold, multifaceted, fixed on her. "Turret's hot," Mira shouted, slamming a fist on her console. A panel in the wall burst open, and a stubby barrel whirred to life, spraying flechettes that shredded the nearest border. Shrapnel pinged off walls, and Elena felt the sting of a fragment grazing her arm. Blood welled, warm and sticky, but she ignored it, reloading on the move. They fell back toward the bridge, the corridor, a choke point. Jax covered their retreat, picking shots with grim precision, each one a kill, no waste. "They're adapting," he grunted as a Zorath ducked the turret's line of fire, using its fallen kin as shields. "See that? They're learning our patterns." Elena nodded, breath ragged. The plan to hold the bridge felt fragile now, like tissue against a storm. The Zorath had come prepared. Their drop pods, not just boarding craft but burrowing ones, latching and cutting faster than simulations predicted. Eons of plotting against humanity. And they'd timed this assault to exploit the nebula's interference, slipping past the fleet's sensors. Mira patched into the ship's intercom. Engineering sealed, but they're venting atmosphere in sections 3 and 4. "If they reach the core, we won't let them." Elena's voice cut sharp, no room for doubt. She triggered a manual override, dropping a security grate between them and the breach. It slammed down, buying seconds, but the torches reignited, sparks flying like angry stars. Jax holstered his weapon and yanked a maintenance panel free, exposing a nest of conduits. "Elena, cover me." "Mira, boost the EMP grid, jury-rig it to this junction." She didn't question it. As another grate began to buckle, Elena laid down, suppressing fire, the recoil jarring her shoulder. The Zorath probed, testing, their movements less chaotic now, more coordinated. One slipped a probe through a seam, scanning, learning the ship's layout in real time. Mira cursed under her breath, splicing wires with a multi-tool. "EMPs for external threats, not internals. This could fry our own systems." "Do it," Jack said, feeding power from auxiliary batteries. His hands, steady despite the sweat beading on his brow, twisted a final connection. The air hummed, charged. The grate gave way and 3 Zorath surged forward, claws extended. Elena's shots clipped one, slowing it, but the others closed fast. "Now," Jax yelled. Mira hit the switch. A pulse rippled through the corridor. Not the full ship's blast, but targeted, localized. The Zorath froze mid-stride, their exoskeletons crackling with discharged energy, neural implants shorting out. They toppled like felled trees, twitching. Elena lowered her pistol, chest heaving. The relief was short-lived. Alarms blared from deeper in the ship. The pulse had worked, but it cascaded. Lights flickered, consoles sparked on the bridge feed. "Collateral," Mira said, wiping her hands. "Core's stable, but we've got blind spots now." Jax clapped Elena's shoulder, a ghost of a grin breaking through. "Bought us time. What's next?" She glanced at the fallen Zorath, their forms already dissolving in acrid smoke. The fight wasn't over, but in that moment humanity's grit had turned the tide an inch. "We push back. Take the fight to their pods." They advanced, weapons ready, the hum of the ship their defiant heartbeat. Elena gripped the railing tighter as the corridor lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the scuffed metal walls. Jax's weight dragged against her side, his breaths ragged, each one a reminder of the shrapnel wound in his thigh. "Keep moving," she muttered, her voice steady despite the ache in her own arms. Mira jogged ahead, her toolkit clanging softly, scanning the bulkhead for the next weak point. The ship's hum had turned to a groan, vibrations rumbling through the deck like the belly of some ancient beast awakening. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red strobes painting their faces in bloody hues. Elena's mind raced. Zorath command deck was 2 levels up, but the direct lift was a mangled ruin from the explosion. "Stairs," she said, pointing to the access hatch Mira had pried open. "We take the maintenance shaft." "No time for elevators." Jax grunted, pushing off her with a wince. "You're crazy. That shaft's a death trap. Narrow, no handholds after the blast." But he didn't argue further, holstering his rifle and drawing his sidearm instead. His free hand pressed a makeshift bandage to his leg, blood seeping through the fingers. Mira nodded, her cautious eyes narrowing as she peered into the dark vertical tunnel. Sparks showered from a frayed cable above, illuminating the rungs twisted like pretzels. Structural integrity at 40%. "It'll hold, but one slip." She trailed off, clipping a harness line to Elena's belt. Always the prudent one, Mira. Her welds back in the bay had bought them minutes, not hours, but it was enough. They descended single file, the air growing thicker with the acrid tang of burning insulation. Elena led, her vibro knife sheathed but ready, boots scraping against the uneven ladder. Halfway down, a jolt shook the ship. Another Zorath sabotage, maybe, or the reactor straining under the damage. The rung under her foot buckled and she swung out, heart slamming as she caught the next one with her fingertips. "Got you," Jax's voice echoed from below, his good leg bracing against the wall as he grabbed her ankle. The motion pulled at his wound, a hiss escaping his teeth, but he held firm until she stabilized. Mira sealed the hatch behind them with a portable welder, the blue flame hissing like a serpent. That buys us privacy. But the Zorath know we're coming. Sensors will pick up the heat sig. Elena dropped the last few meters, landing with a thud that echoed up the shaft. The lower corridor stretched out, dimly lit and eerily quiet, save for the distant thrum of engines. Then we make it quick. Jax, cover the flank. Mira, rig the door to blow if they follow. They moved as a unit, boots silent on the grated floor. Jax limped but kept pace, his witty edge dulled by pain yet flickering in a grim smile. "If I die down here, tell my sister I went out shooting aliens, not tripping over my own feet." "Save the jokes," Elena snapped. But there was no heat in it. Camaraderie forged in fire, the kind that humans clung to when the stars turned hostile. She shouldered the access panel to the engineering bay, where the Zorath had nested their core override. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber alive with glowing consoles and writhing conduits. Zorath technicians frozen in surprise. The first one lunged, its elongated limbs cracking like whips, but Elena was already firing. Short, controlled bursts from her pistol that punched through its exoskeletal armor. It crumpled, ichor splattering the deck, but two more swarmed from the shadows, their rune-etched claws igniting with plasma energy. Mira dove behind a server stack, her welder repurposed into a makeshift flamethrower. Flames roared out, catching one Zorath mid-leap and sending it screeching into a bulkhead. Overload on Console 3. They're rerouting power to the main guns. Jax braced against the wall, rifle barking. His shot clipped the second Zorath's shoulder, staggering it long enough for Elena to close the distance. She drove her knife into its neck joint, twisting until the glow faded. The body slumped, heavy and twitching, but the console sparked violently, arcs of energy leaping toward them. Mira scrambled forward, fingers flying over the alien interface, her cautious nature yielding to desperate focus. Human code. They underestimated our back doors. I can shunt the power, but it'll fry the auxiliary systems. No life support backups after. "Do it," Elena ordered, slamming a panel shut to contain a secondary explosion. The ship lurched, gravity fluctuating as Mira input the commands. Jax covered her, picking off a straggling drone that buzzed from the vents. The console went dark with a final pop, the Zorath overrides crumbling under the improvised hack. Alarms shifted tone from invasion to system failure, but the immediate threat receded. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the air already growing stale without the recyclers. Jax slid down the wall, color draining from his face. "One bay down. Command deck next. Think we can make Tuesday?" Mira checked his bandage, her hands steady. "If we push. But the cost?" She glanced at the sealed vents, the dying lights. Elena met their eyes, resolve hardening. "We push. Humanity doesn't quit on a timetable." The final ascent began, shadows lengthening as the ship's heart faltered. The command deck loomed ahead, its bulkhead doors cracked open like a predator's maw, spilling emergency strobes that painted the corridor in blood-red pulses. Mira led the charge, her jury-rigged scanner clutched like a weapon, beeping frantic warnings about failing life support and converging Zorath signals. Jax flanked her, rifle slung low, his breaths ragged but steady, the painkillers wearing off, turning every step into gritted defiance. Elena brought up the rear, hauling the satchel of scavenged explosives, her mind racing through the ship's schematics one last time. Override the core, flood the systems with the virus, and pray the hull held long enough for evacuation. "Contacts closing," Mira hissed, ducking as a drone whirred from an overhead grate, its laser grazing the bulkhead with a screech of molten metal. Jax snapped off 2 shots, the thing exploding in a shower of sparks that lit his grim smile. "That's for the engine bay, you bastard." They burst through the doors into chaos, consoles flickering, holographic displays glitching with alien code, and 3 Zorath enforcers, tall, chitinous figures with glowing neural implants, pivoting toward the intrusion. The air hummed with their psychic probes, a mental pressure that made Elena's vision blur, whispering doubts into her skull. Surrender. Your kind ends here. She shook it off, slamming the satchel onto the central dais and yanking wires free. Cover me! Elena barked, fingers flying across the interface. The first enforcer lunged, its claws raking Jax's shoulder. He spun, firing point blank, the blast shearing off an arm in a spray of ichor. Mira flanked left, her scanner doubling as a disruptor, emitting a pulse that staggered the second Zorath, buying seconds. But the third adapted fast, its implant flaring as it hurled a kinetic wave that buckled the deck plating. Jax went down hard, skidding across the floor, rifle clattering away. Jax! Mira's voice cracked, but she didn't break, diving to drag him back, her free hand slapping a fresh clip into his sidearm. Elena ignored the ache in her temples, the virus upload crawling at half speed as the core fought back. Not today, she thought, channeling every late-night sim, every human hack that had outwitted the stars. She bypassed the failsafe with a crude loop, rerouting power from the weapons grid to overload their neural net. The console sparked, heat blooming under her palms, but the progress bar inched forward. The wounded enforcer rallied, psychic lash cracking like thunder, slamming Mira against a panel. She slumped, blood trickling from her ear, but her eyes locked on Elena. Finish it. For Earth. Jax, hauling himself up on one elbow, squeezed off rounds that clipped the Zorath's leg, slowing it just enough. Elena hit enter. The deck shuddered as the virus cascaded, hollow screens fracturing into static, the enforcers convulsing, their implants frying in bursts of blue fire. One collapsed inches from her, claws twitching, the psychic hum dying to silence. Alarms wailed victory, core compromised, ship-wide shutdown initiating. But the cost hit like fallout. Jax's wound weeping dark, Mira's breath shallow, and the viewport showing escape pods jettisoning into the void, humanity's remnants scattering. Elena pulled them close, sealing the breach with a final command. Evac protocols engaged. They had until dawn. Humanity endured.